So, welcome to Beauty of Colors podcast, Kathleen. It's good to have you on the show.
It's so nice of you to have me. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. So, tell the listeners about you and how did you become a writer?
Oh, well, so it's pretty weird, actually. I didn't become a writer until late in life, and at least I thought it was late in life, but it ended up being that when I look back over my past, I think I was a writer, and I think my mom knew it, but I didn't. So she took a poem of mine and she put it into an embroidery cross stitch. And I was in college, and she handed it to me, and I said, I came home from college one afternoon, and she goes, I did this for you. And I said, oh, that's very nice. And she said, you wrote this poem. And I went, what? And so she had taken and counted every single letter, and just it's like a four stanza poem. And so I just thought, well, maybe I'm a writer. And then it ended up that my first book was, the title was the second to the last line in that poem, because I was looking around for a title, and I went, oh, there it is. And so kind of a full circle thing, because I didn't write that book and publish it until 2016. So it was like, 40 years in between.
Okay. And is this the only book that you have published, or do you have quite a bit of books published?
Well, I have 3 books total. The first one that I mentioned is called Giving Myself to the Wind, which is the second to the last line of the poem. And it's a collection of stories and poems and essays. So it's a collection. And the next book I wrote and published was during COVID, because I thought, oh, okay, I might die. So I wrote this book called My Piano Hands, and I play the piano by ear. And it ends up that the book that I wrote is a series of small memoirs. So it's called a memoir collection, very short. And that one I totally wrote from the beginning to the end and published it during COVID. And there's a musical piece that I wrote in it as well. And that whole book trailer can be seen on my website. It's 2-minute book trailer, and it has my piano playing in the background. And then the last book I wrote and published this year, I started it in 2003 and I published it in 2022. And I want to say to other writers out there, sometimes it takes that long to get the book published. It's a slog, and you go in and out, and then you change the protagonist, which I did, I don't know, at least 10 or 12 times, change the point of view, change the voice, the tone, and had a lot of people read different versions of it. One of my readers said, death is stealing every scene, and she ended up being the main character, and she is a she. And he said, she's just stealing all the scenes, so she needs to be your main character.
And what's the name of the book? That
one is called Death List.
Death List. Okay.
Yeah.
So is it fiction or nonfiction? Do you prefer more fiction? Do you prefer nonfiction?
Yeah, that's my first full-length fiction piece, Death List. The first book had some short stories in it, which are fiction, but this was my first full-length fiction piece. And it's satirical. It's very kind of sacrilegious, but funny.
Okay.
And it has sort of a lot of metaphysical overtones having to do with whether or not a person would want to know when they're going to die. Because, and this was started way before COVID, 2003. But I think the question for me was, if I knew when I was going to die, would I change the immediacy of my life's purpose? And so that's kind of what I wanted to do with the book, but I didn't want to make it so heavy. So it's funny.
So from that fiction, did you draw out of your life experience during COVID, and did you kind of put it in this book?
That's a good question. I think by the time I finally published the book, I think I was pretty sure I wasn't going to die of COVID, but I think also it brought it to an immediacy where I had to publish this novel that I had been working on for decades, if I did pass away. So it was informed by the pandemic.
So how much time do you spend writing every day, or do you have a particular amount of words that you want to complete throughout the day?
You know, I am also a business writer, and I do blogging and I do website content and I do white papers. My background is business. So in the last 10 years, I combined my business degree with the writing that I love. And so I end up doing a lot of nonfiction writing, but probably with more of a fiction flair to it, which is something that my clients like because it's just not boring. She said, he said, it has more life to it. Sometimes I go a little out in the deep end and they have to pull me back. But it's fun because I guess the best thing about writing for all of us writers is what we get to learn as we're writing. And it's not just learn facts and history, which is all fun, but a lot of it's learning about ourselves. Beginning reason for my writing is journaling. I journal every day and it connects me with myself.
When is your best time?
So I get up and I meditate and then I journal, and then I do a little yoga. It just needs to start the day with this ritual that kind of keeps me settled.
Okay, nice. That's good. So what is the hardest thing you've ever done in writing? What's the hardest thing?
You know, first of all, marketing is horrible. Because,
Tell me about it.
Clea, we don't have that tool strength in our toolbox to be marketers as well as we are writers. So that's probably number one for me. And then number two, the act of publishing. It's so useful to go through that because you learn about the industry, you learn about different parts of what goes into a book, about chapters and layout and editing, and it's endless and it's sometimes very frustrating, but probably because it's frustrating, it's very satisfying when it's all over.
I'm also the author of 3 books, so I kind of know where you're going at. It's a little frustrating when it comes to marketing. Yeah. Sometimes you want to give up. You're like, okay, that's it.
Yeah. So what's the hardest for you?
The hardest for me is not the writing, it's the marketing, because you want to get the book out there, but you want to get it into the right hands, so the genre that you're writing for sometimes is not necessarily the genre who gets the book, is another genre. So it's a little battle when it comes to marketing, and especially if you don't have the assistance that you need, like a marketing person to help you out, and you're doing everything yourself. Especially young girls or young boys who are just starting writing. As you said, you started very young writing. What advice would you give to them?
I think it's very important to surround yourself with other writers. So I am a co-president of a writing club here in California. It's one of the oldest writing clubs in the world, which is really weird, but it's nice because the people there understand you and they understand the angst and the anxiety and the problems. But also, I think in addition to that, going to different workshops and going to conferences and listening to writers that are in your genre or even not in your genre, because they have so much to give you that you didn't even think about. You didn't even know what you didn't know. So that's important. And then I think the other thing that we all want our first writing to be perfect. Yeah. And in Bird by Bird, she says, you just have to start. You just have to do the word by the word and not worry about if it's the right word on the first draft. You just have to get the first draft out. So maybe the best advice is get it down, and just doesn't matter what it looks like. And I think one of your other authors, the 14-year-old, I can't remember her name. She writes 1,000 words every day. And I think that's really good advice for new writers, just to get it out there, because it's like a muscle. If you work it every day, it's going to get stronger. And then it'll get better if you take classes and talk to other writers and try different things, try nonfiction, try fiction.
Mhm.
Poems are great because they really make you pay attention to the meter and the sound of the words. That may not be what you want to write ultimately, but it gives you strength in just the craft of writing and how the words fit together and flow.
That's great advice, Kathleen. So where can the listeners get a copy of your books?
All of my books are available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, from my website or just directly from Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And Amazon, all three of my books are available on Kindle. Then there's the Kindle free. If you're a part of that, then they can just pick up the book and read it without, paying, which is fine.
Mhm.
And then for my website, I have links to that to buy my books. And my website is Kathryn, Kathryn, at Kathryn Atkins, my full name, KathrynAtkins.com.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, Kathleen. Well, it was great to have you on the show.